Before I begin today's announcement, I want to say a few words about travel. We are currently in discussion with Canadian Airlines to help Canadians to come back home. We will have more details to announce, but I can tell you that the first flight will leave Morocco over the weekend. As I announced on Wednesday, Canada and the United States have concluded an agreement to prevent non-essential travel, particularly tourists. Trade will, however, continue. This measure will come into effect at midnight tonight. Minister Blair will provide more information on this later today. Furthermore, Canada and the United States are announcing a mutual agreement under which we will now send back irregular migrants trying to cross the border.
We're in discussion with Canadian Airlines to help Canadians stranded abroad come home. We will have more details to share, but the first flight will be picking up Canadians from Morocco this weekend. As I announced Wednesday, Canada and the United States have agreed to stop non-essential travel, specifically for tourism and recreation. Trade and commerce will continue. This takes effect at midnight tonight, and Minister Blair will give more details today. Further, today, Canada and the United States are announcing a reciprocal arrangement where we will now be returning irregular migrants who attempt to cross anywhere at the Canada-US border.
Over the last week, the entire country has mobilized to slow down the spread of COVID-19. Doctors and nurses in retirement have come in to help in the hospitals, and people administering the screening tests and researchers looking for a solution always are working longer hours. The important thing is that people follow the instructions from our public health officials. Frequent hand washing, working from home, limiting travel in order to protect our health and the health of others. But it's not only individuals who want to help their communities. Businesses as well are stepping up. I think, for example, of grocery stores that are opening an hour earlier to serve the most vulnerable Canadians, or manufacturing companies that are asking what they can do to help. Just last week, a number of companies right across the country contacted our government to offer their assistance. I want to thank them for their solidarity and their generosity.
This week, many businesses put their hand up and asked us what they can do. So today we're announcing a new strategy that will make it easier for companies to help out during this critical time. We are launching Canada's plan to mobilize industry to fight COVID-19 to ensure that we can quickly produce here in Canada the things we need. This initiative will help companies that are already making things like masks, ventilators, and hand sanitizer to massively scale up production. It will also provide support to those who want to retool their manufacturing facilities to contribute to this fight. For example, the Auto Parts Manufacturers Association reached out to us asking how they could help. Our healthcare professionals really need support, so our government will help these companies shift production from auto parts to medical supplies. We're also closing to reach agreements with several other companies, including Thornhill Medical, Medicom, and Spartan Bioscience. Minister Baines and Minister Anand will have more to say on this later today. Our government is also creating new, innovative procurement streams to allow more businesses to develop solutions and products Canadians need because of COVID-19. We will expedite these streams so firms can get to work quickly and these products are ready to use as soon as possible. Canada is home to some of the best innovators in the world, and with this new initiative, we will harness their talent and know-how to get through these challenging times. Aujourd'hui,
Today, we are launching a plan to mobilize industry to fight COVID-19 so that we can rapidly produce the articles we need here in Canada. Through this plan, companies that are already producing respirators and masks and hand sanitizer will be able to considerably scale up their production. We will also be supporting those that need to buy equipment to allow their plants to produce the articles now in demand. For example, the Auto Parts Manufacturing Association has reached out to us to see how it can help. Our healthcare professionals really need our support, and therefore our government will help those companies to produce medical equipment rather than auto parts. We are also reaching agreements with a number of other companies, including Thornhill Medical, Medicom, and Spartan Bioscience. Ministers Baines and Anand will have more to say about that later today. Our government will also be introducing no innovative procurement streams in order to allow a larger number of businesses to develop solutions and products that Canadians need because of COVID-19. We will quickly be expediting this new process so that companies can get down to work as soon as possible. Canadian innovators are among the best in the world, and with this new strategy, we are putting in practice and using their talents and their knowledge in order to help us come through this difficult time together.
Over the past week, Service Canada and many government agencies have received a historic number of calls from concerned Canadians. We received over 500,000 applications so far this week, compared to just under 27,000 applications for the same week last year. I know people are anxious to get the help they deserve, and our government is working as fast as possible to support them. This is, of course, an unprecedented situation, and it's putting a lot of pressure on our system, but we're on it. Thousands of public servants are working around the clock to help you. I know this past week has been hard on people for many reasons. Working from home while the kids are running around, not being able to visit your parents at their nursing home, not hanging out with your friends. It can take its toll. But it is in these challenging times that we also see what we're made of. This past week, no matter how difficult, was further proof that Canadians are generous, kind, and compassionate, and that should give us all hope. We all understand our responsibility as Canadians. We have to do the right thing, whether it's working from home or practicing social distancing, to protect our nurses, doctors, and everyone who works in our healthcare system. To deal with this crisis, we need everyone, citizens, businesses, and governments, to come together and do their part. That's what we've seen right across the country. I want to thank all the workers who are stepping up, and all the companies who are making things our country needs. If you own a business and you're wondering what you can do, reach out. We need your help. Canadians need your help. And our government is ready to work with you to maximize your impact. I will end this morning by addressing all those celebrating Nowruz today and this past week. This is usually a time when friends and families gather around the half-seen table and share a festive meal, but this year is a bit different. To the many families who've been spending their first Nowruz without loved ones lost in the Ukraine International Airlines tragedy, know that all Canadians mourn with you. I also know that many have had to postpone festivities because of COVID-19, and I want to thank you for that as well. Social distancing is crucial in limiting the spread of the virus, and we do this now. Soon we will be able to celebrate together. In the meantime, I want to wish you all a very happy New Year, Nowruz Etan Piruz, and I look forward to marking the occasion with you again in the future. Encore une fois, merci.
Once again, thank you for being here. I would now be pleased to take your questions.
Hi, Prime Minister. Molly Thomas, CTV National News. You say that you're working with private companies to mass manufacture ventilators, masks, and tests. I mean, how fast can a private company actually produce ventilators, for example, up to standard? And can this keep up with the rate of what we're seeing, 50 new cases in Ontario already today?
We know that Canadian companies are among the most innovative and agile in the world, and we are very confident that we're going to be able to work with them to respond to the pressing needs in our healthcare system.
Timeline on that.
We are confident that our companies that are among the most innovative and creative in the world will be able to respond to this request quickly, and Minister Anon and Baines will have more to say about this at noon at their press conference.
Soon.
Monsieur Trudeau, Philippe Vincent Fossé, Radio-Canada.
Radio-Canada. Now, to what extent the efforts that you're asking of these companies looks like the kinds of efforts we saw during World War II? And with respect to Roxham Road, exactly how will this work? Will there be a barrier? Will people be sent back? How will it work? Well, this is a measure where people arriving at the border, if they're irregular migrants, will be sent back and put back in the hands of U.S. authorities. And this is a temporary measure that we're introducing, and it will remain in place as long as this crisis exists. It's an exceptional measure in order to protect our citizens. Well, in terms of the current efforts, we will continue to work together. We know that these are exceptional circumstances, unprecedented circumstances. Some people are relating it to a war situation or other major economic crises. We will do whatever we need to do.
We recognize that the efforts we are going through are unprecedented. These are historic times in which we need to do everything we can to support Canadians and mobilize all our efforts in smart ways. There are people who are talking about historical echoes, whether it was wartime or Great Depression. We're focused on doing what we need to do right now. We know that Canada has never faced a situation like this, and we will face through it together.
Morning, Prime Minister. Olivia Stepanovich, CBC News. California is under an official state lockdown to deal with COVID-19. Why isn't Canada putting stricter measures in place to ensure or enforce that people practice social distancing and do a self-isolation? And is Canada considering following California's lead with a lockdown? We
are seeing Canadians right across the country take on social distancing, take on measures that are protecting citizens. We know there's always more to do. We will continue to work to encourage people to stay home, to practice social distancing, not just to protect themselves, but also to protect our healthcare workers and the system that is working so hard to keep so many Canadians safe and healthy. This is something we're going to continue to look for. We'll always be open to taking new measures, but we are continuing to impress upon Canadians how important it is to do just that.
Is Canada considering a lockdown?
We are looking at all possible different measures. As I've said repeatedly, nothing is off the table. But, we will continue to announce measures that become necessary. Right now, I want to congratulate and thank the millions upon millions of Canadians who are using social distancing and intelligence to keep themselves safe, to keep safe, and to keep millions de Canadiens qui ont fait des choix.
Press conference having a little technical difficulty here. As soon as we get back a stable shot and we're able to hear the Prime Minister continue to take some questions from reporters, we'll bring that to you. I'm sure everyone has felt systems being overwhelmed as of late as more people use phones and the internet, and this could be related to that. So anyway, we'll bring that back to you just as soon as we can. A couple significant announcements there from the Prime Minister today. First, on that issue of how industry might help going forward. to create and secure our medical supply chain. He says that basically they are going to do everything they can, that these are historic times and they need companies to mobilize. Maybe I'll go to Vashi quickly while we wait to see if we can get back the Prime Minister, just for your perspective on what we heard there from the Prime Minister.
So you're absolutely right. A lot of significant announcements. What I want to start with, though, is the statistic that he gave that kind of, took my breath away. That's actually one of the saddest things. I know we expected it, but... Okay,
Vashi, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you because we got him back. I'll come right back to that promise. Here's the Prime Minister.
People will make decisions in consequence based on their own choices. I think that's the important part that we're continuing to advise people about.
Parfait, on va maintenant passer aux questions des journalistes sur la ligne. Modératrice, c'est à vous.
Thank you. Merci. We will now be taking questions from the telephone lines. Our first question, notre première question vient de David Youngbrun with Reuters Ottawa. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Yes, thank you, Prime Minister. Do you think Canadian athletes should go to the Tokyo Olympics even if the Games are not called off?
I think that's an important question that many athletes and coaches and family members are asking themselves. Athletes can take and train as won't happen for a few more months. I have heard directly from Prime Minister Abe that he is intent on continuing to hold these Olympics, and I congratulate him for that decision. But obviously, Canadian athletes and the Canadian Olympic team will be making its decision as we get a little closer. Okay. Je reconnais que nos athlètes et nos équipes sont en train de s'entraîner pour les Olympiques qui s'en viennent au mois de juillet. Je reconnais aussi que le Premier ministre du Japon, Shinzo Abe, a annoncé qu'il tient absolument à continuer avec ces Olympiques. Mais les équipes et les athlètes canadiens vont prendre leurs décisions dans les semaines et peut-être le mois à venir par rapport à notre participation, dépendamment de des circonstances.
Everything depends on the situation in Japan and around the world.
Thank you. Merci. Notre prochaine question is from Amélie Bergeron. Please go ahead. À vous la parole. À vous la parole.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. There's a great deal of concern about diagnostic testing. Some provinces are concerned that not enough testing is being done. Now, with these new efforts with Canadian companies, will that help? Well, yes, absolutely. What we're announcing today will help. But I can also say that in recent days, I've seen new approvals of different types of tests that will be available to the provinces. We are currently ramping up the number of tests right across the country. Just in recent days, we saw a huge increase in the number of tests being administered on Canadians. We also heard from other jurisdictions that this is a very important part of preventing the spread of COVID-19, and we will have enough tests for everyone to meet needs.
Thank you. Our next question, notre prochaine question, is from Justin Lang. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Hi, Prime Minister. There is concerns that prison and detention facilities are particularly risky vectors for transmitting COVID-19. Some states and other countries have done things to reduce the prison population. Is Canada considering that? And secondarily, yesterday your plan was to detain migrants crossing into Canada in federal facilities. Now you're planning to send them back to the U.S., where they may be interned in ICE detention facilities and potentially even deported back to South America. Is that wise?
First of all, on Corrections Canada, I can assure you that the Minister of Public Safety is engaged with the head of Corrections Canada to take measures to keep our incarcerated population safe. That is something that we are looking at very carefully, and we understand the heightened risks in those institutions. In regards to the agreement we just worked out over the past 24 hours with the Americans, we recognize that these are exceptional international times, and someone who comes to the border to request asylum will be turned back to American authorities, as happens right now when someone comes to an official border crossing and requests asylum. We turn them over to American authorities at the border, where they are released almost immediately into the into the United States. They are, for the most part, people who are legally in the United States, and that is something we are confident about. We also have ensured that we are comfortable with this process as being in line with Canada's values on the treatment of refugees and vulnerable people. Okay. We
recognize that this is a temporary measure in terms of sending back migrants trying to cross the border irregularly, and this would be the same thing for someone coming to the border based on the regular process and requesting asylum. We send them back to the U.S. authorities, and we are ensuring that the processes used are in keeping with Canadian values.
Thank you. Merci. Notre dernière question, our last question, is from Mary Vastel. Please go ahead. À vous la parole. Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. J'aimerais continuer sur cette ligne-là.
Yes, I'd like to continue in the same vein. Yesterday, you announced that with respect to Roxham Road, people would be placed in quarantine. Why did you change the tone some 24 hours later? Is it because you don't know where to put them? Are you lacking resources? Or suddenly you have more concerns about a possible infection? No, not at all. People who came in at the beginning of the week are currently in isolation, and that is a step we had already put in place. But at the same time, we have been working with our U.S. counterparts to try and find a way to develop these people somewhat differently if they're crossing the border as irregular migrants. For a number of years, we have been discussing this with the U.S. to try and find or develop a measure like this one, and we were able to agree on this process on a temporary basis because of the COVID-19 crisis. But yesterday, we had not yet been able to agree on this with the United States. Now we have that agreement, so obviously people who have crossed up until now will be in isolation, as I said yesterday, but in future, people trying to cross the border will be returned to the U.S. authorities. But as I said, this is a mutual agreement with the United States that was reached just a few hours ago.
Merci tout le monde. Bonne journée.
All right, that is the Prime Minister of Canada addressing Canadians now for the fifth day from his home, Rideau Cottage, where he is self-isolating with his family. Lots of news today, and lots of it really important to you. So let's bring in both Vashi Kapelis and David Cochrane. And Vashi, I cut you off, so I